after, like, it's cool, but it would be funny if you did it with Ja Rule.
Let's be honest, everything's funnier with Ja Rule.
Welcome to the Barry Podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G, master of damage control. And I'm here with my co-host, Magnum Mills. We're going to break down the latest episode of Barry. Mills, are you still with us, or did you get a show of your own yet?
Oh, dude, I'm still here. I used the data from the algorithm, and that led me to writing a Police Academy reboot that was set during a pandemic. But despite all those being things that came up with the algorithm, I'm having a hard time finding the comedy in that setup. So still going to probably be here to finish out the season. Thank you for checking us out. I am Magnum Mills. We are the Barry Podcast. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so. You can find us on your favorite podcast app by searching for Barry Podcast. Same thing on social media at Barry Podcast. You can send your feedback to barrypodcast@gmail.com. And we're from the Joe Blow Football Show. You can find it at joeblowfootballshow.com and on social media at Joe Blow Show.
And please remember, ladies and gents, we absolutely will be spoiling all aired episodes of Barry, as well as any articles, interviews, or podcast appearances. Don't you worry, no leaks, no rumors, just every episode up through episode 7 of season 3, titled Candy Asses. Mills, get off your candy ass and give us the details of this episode.
Oh, there's so many jokes you could make there. I guess maybe we'll go with a rock joke later. We'll see. And this is episode 7 of season 3, as the man said, titled Candy Asses, originally aired Sunday, June 5th, 2022, directed by Bill Hader once again, written by Liz Sarnoff. This is her third written by credit on Barry. She previously wrote The Audition and Loud, Fast, and Keep Going. Short plot synopsis is Barry goes to the beach. NoHo Hank waits politely. Fuchs might be out of his league, and Sally begins work on the new Medusas.
So you're saying that Barry Berkman is
right near the beach, boy.
Oh, see, fuck, I was gonna go with the rock is smelling. You do the half-baked reference. It's all good. It's all good, baby. Let's do the thing, man. Let's do this thing. And we open in a church where the congregation is standing while singing. When the hymn is over, everyone sits down except one man, George Kremp, the father of Ryan Madison. Next, we see Barry foaming at the mouth and convulsing on the floor of Sharon's house. Sharon can't handle looking at Barry, so she puts a towel on his face, grabs her keys, and runs out the door. Barry stops convulsing and groaning as we cut to the title card silently.
It's kind of like, Mills, you ever like, maybe in your younger days, like have a huge mess or something and you just don't want to deal with it. And so you just throw the old newspaper or paper towel over it and just pretend it's gone, and
to put everything in the closet of mystery is what you do. Then everything goes under the bed or into the closet of mystery.
Like if I just can't see it anymore because there's just I love that she just threw it over his face. Like this was cool.
Right, it's a very Mike Ehrmantraut would call that a half measure, right? It hides him from sight, but it really doesn't do enough to impede his breathing or something. At least throw a pillow or something, so maybe it'll help end it faster. Because that's the thing here, right? What was her plan? Where did the poison come from? It seems to minimum that this was not thought out very well on Sharon's part, especially because obviously she didn't give him enough poison, or she sprung the red card on him before he could use enough of the sauce there on the beignets to poison himself enough. I mean, it seems like sloppy work. Maybe it's because she didn't ultimately deep down want to go through with it. Of all the ways this could have gone, I never saw this coming.
No. And, if only Barry would have listened to Mitch, always listen to Mitch when you're going to get beignets.
Zoom hang first would have been, and then he could add all the beignets he wanted to himself.
Mills, one thing I noticed here with Sharon is it was almost like as Barry was starting to convulse, it was almost a, oh shit, what have I done moment. And I think her running out of the house and kind of running it behind it. At first, I thought maybe she was going to give him the antidote. Maybe she would regret it, not be able to go through with it and give it to him. But then just to see her put the towel over his face and run out added a little bit of humor to it for me. But, I guess one thing we'll never know is they kind of didn't show us when Fuchs got to her. They didn't show us what the poison was, how much was given. Maybe that comes up in a future episode when he gets his, toxicology reports or whatever from going to the hospital. But I don't know if we're ever going to find that out. It feels like it was just maybe just a little bit of a hole in the plot line.
Again, them doing kind of what they had to do. I think the one quibble you could have here is that they ended last episode with Barry, seemingly poisoned and possibly dying, but we all know Barry's been renewed for season 4. I don't think Bill Hader's just going to stay on as a director. Pretty sure Barry's going to live. So it felt a little bit cheap. And I was hoping maybe there was a more clever way to get him out of this than just kind of like, I don't know, he didn't get poisoned enough. And I had the same kind of feeling that Sharon was having second thoughts, and maybe she was going to give him the antidote or an EpiPen. I don't know, is Barry, does he have a Black Noir thing? Does he have an allergy we don't know about that she knew about from his military records or something? Just thought of that, but that feels better than poison. Maybe an allergic reaction. Best I got.
I wish it would have been a bit more clever, my dude.
Yeah, just one short 20. Just give me just a little bit there. Just a little bit to connect the dots. Not even all the way. Just get me halfway there.
Just give him a tug or two. He does not asking for 46 tugs in a row. He's just asking for a tug or two. Now we're on the set of Gene Cousineau's masterclass show. Gene seems to be doing well here. He talks about how actors are really mask collectors, and the audience seems to be enjoying it. We also see Annie working as the director, and she seems to be pretty damn tough, but fair.
Yeah, I did like when Gene's doing his little opening monologue, and he's pretending like, oh, mask collecting. He's like, oh no, this isn't the show you think. And he's like, you're probably saying this to your laptop or mobile device right now. It was just like, that's how people of that generation say that in just a so specific way. So probably not a lot of acting by Winkler there. It just made me laugh. Along with, he did have a certain line when he said, this class is not about entrances and exits. And if you've ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, not going to go off and do it much, but somebody writes an erotic memoir and there's a term like this, and there's a librarian involved, and Richard Grieco may or may not be involved with it all. So just saying, definitely got some flashbacks there with the entrances and exits line.
Yes, we did. I'm happy to see Gene in kind of all of his glory here. And dude, ever since we started talking about it, Mills, I'm digging the Gene Cousineau's like wardrobe. Like his fashion sense is like, it's so new, it's so crazy. I don't even know what it is. It's wild and it's bold, and he is like,
I think it's jacket from the 70s, tie from the 80s, shirt from the 90s. I think that's what I've landed on. We don't see the pants a lot, so I'm assuming either where it's just kind of regular-ish jeans or 60s pants. So I think he's trying to represent every decade of his career there. And one thing, when he comes on, he's trying to do little like famous acting bits. In the way he did his Hamlet, I had to listen. I'm like, is he doing Hamlet with like a Brooklyn accent or something? I swear, I don't know why this is, but I swear that Henry Winkler is doing a Christopher Walken doing Hamlet impression.
Hamlet. To be or not to be?
No idea why. It's the same voice he uses when he does the taxi cab gag, though.
Pulling out that muck and throwing it on the stage. Hey, I'm acting here.
Don't know why. Go back, rewatch it. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me he's not channeling Christopher Walken when he's doing his Hamlet. Just saying.
It looked like it. I was a big fan of the taxi cab and then the follow-up to it. Pretty cool shit there for Gene, man. Good to see him back in that world, even though it took a little bit to get there, and it's different than his other acting class. So I actually like what the show did with Gene's journey here, from what we known of him the last 2 seasons to now. He's kind of in this nothing, giving up and hurt because of Janice, and now he's back in his own way here teaching students. I mean, he's made for this shit, dude. It's just perfect for the Wink. Happy for Gene Cousineau.
He's acting in an acting class. What can you say? That's very circular of him. And it was time to check back in on Barry. So we go back to Sharon. So we see that Barry has regained consciousness, and he starts kind of staggering outside, walking like a zombie a little bit. Still having trouble breathing here, and he's kind of going down the road. And as he's going down the road, you just see like the ocean starts coming in, and then there's water, and then there's the beach, and then you turn around and there's no more neighborhood. He's just out on the beach, and he looks and he sees a group of people gathering on the beach in the distance. Again, this is just kind of setting up some of the imagery and kind of the little Barry. Hader said they didn't say it's not necessarily supposed to be purgatory or heaven or hell, just like something your brain is doing or whatever. But I thought the way they blended the shot of the neighborhood and the street with the beach and time that up, especially when you kind of saw the water flowing up. I'm sure there had to be a decent amount of CGI going there, but I thought that was again just a really impressive shot.
It definitely was. And when you saw that, and then you see him on the beach, did it come to you at all that maybe he was dead? Because that's when that thought started coming, like, okay, I know he's not going to die. They'll bring him back. Something will happen, but is he kind of dead right now? Like that's kind of what started creeping through my head. Like, holy shit, like, are they going to go that way? And maybe that was just me trying to hold off hope that he didn't just wake up from it and stumble out of the house. And, it had that eeriness to it. There was, you couldn't see a shred of blue in the sky. It was cloudy. It just had that feel of like, maybe he was dead, even though that's not what they intended to do. It sounds like from listening to Haters podcast, but it felt that way a little bit to me.
This is where it depends probably on how much TV because you right away, I was getting the test stream vibes from The Sopranos. I'm not going to spoil a lot, but that's the season 2 finale, I believe. And that involves someone having food poisoning and they kind of go into this delirium, but they do derive some truth out of it. And just kind of the way when the blending together, it made me think of that. But it also could be, again, one of those things. If this were the series finale, then I might have had the thought like, oh, this is all in Barry's head and he's actually still laying there on the floor dying, one of those kind of things. But because of just kind of knowing outside knowledge that Barry has to live somehow, I think it was kind of like just it's some sort of hallucination again. And that's basically what it winds up being, right? It's some of what he sees is real and some of it's not.
After that, we find ourselves in the writer's room of the New Medusas. And it's just as much of a shit show as one would imagine. Showrunner Mel seems like he's literally the worst. And most of the writers are pretty much afraid to speak up or share their real, actual opinions. But not Sally Reed, not our girl, Sally Reed. She calls him out on his bullshit. And the other writers compliment her in doing so after they leave the room.
I think the show has gone out of their way to try to show that when it at least comes to the work stuff, Sally is very good. She's a good actress, good writer. She understands how to write and run a show, which are all difficult things. It also shows that she is maybe not the greatest human being and she has a fuck ton of issues. But here you can see why, right? She comes in, she has smart commentary, and especially because you hear, especially when they go in the hall, you look at the writers, these are all younger people. The guy's obviously older. They make a crack like, oh, he was a writer back on Everybody Loves Raymond. And we're old enough that was like forever ago all of a sudden. So make me feel a little bit old there. Just some good, fun stuff in this. If you look at the whiteboard behind the showrunner there, Mel, here's what it said, just because they're laying out the episode that they're talking about. And there's 8 bullet points. They are: club, everyone horny. Abby meets Calvin. Deuce and Lee get CC, which I'm assuming is they get a credit card. Girls get fired. Abby buys a hat to hide snakes. Abby and Calvin eat pizza. WTF. A and C, hookup disaster. Gals rally. Abby feels okay about Cale death.
That's great. Thank you for walking us through that, Mills. I was trying to pause it and read it. Didn't get to see it though.
I tried, and then you did get just a little idea of what the dialogue and stuff. You had the great exchange where Sally says,
there's that great scene where Medusa Abby's hooking up with the bartender and the snakes keep falling out of her hat. That's funny.
That's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be real.
Oh.
And then they have talk about how the one chick gets mad whenever she turns the guy to stone, and Sally asks.
But then she turns him to stone, but then she's still horny, so she sucks and then eats his dick. Is that literal?
What else would it be?
Like, that's just how it'll give you an idea, right? That this guy's so out of touch that he thinks the real shit's funny and the funny shit's real.
Yeah, he's definitely out of touch. I thought the actor did a great job kind of playing this disheveled, totally kind of in his own universe thing. And then I love when after, some of the writers are kind of like, she kind of got a point, Mel. And he looks behind him, he just starts speaking like gibberish and tongues and shit, trying to
he's
come
looking
to
at the
grips
board,
with it.
like just trying to, again, and like this is I don't buy the I don't know how this act structure is going to flow with the episode they've laid out. I don't know. I'm not confident that the New Medusas is going to run for a long time right now, if I had to say. Sorry, New Medusas. And we kind of continue with that scene into the hallway where one of the writers points out a room where writers for a new show are meeting. Apparently the new showrunner is a fucking party. Sally goes to see what's going on, and when she looks into the room through the glass panel of the door, she sees that the showrunner in question is none other than Natalie, who was previously her assistant. Natalie and the rest of her writers seem to be having a blast, while Sally seems to be on the verge of exploding with rage.
This is tough because as I was watching this, two things came through my head, Magnum Mills. One, you kind of saw this coming a little bit and maybe did a little foreskin foreshadowing here for us, just a little bit, where you peeled back and showed just a smidge of the tip, because I really think that, if memory serves, you called maybe Natalie kind of getting her own thing here, and that being the ultimate dagger. And maybe that's kind of, it happened. And it was, I feel for Sally here, because like, man, I liked Happy Sally when things were going well for her and she was working so hard and proud. Sad Sally, it's fine, but bums me out a little bit.
That's one of the things that the show did well that haters pointed out, is that they wanted to make it so that Sally did everything right, at least professionally. She played the game. She made good products. She worked hard. She treated the people under her well. She did everything she was quote unquote supposed to do, but life sucks and it hits you anyways. But think about how high she was on that stage, 98% to where she ends up in this episode. It's just wild. Like, she's so low for a minute. I'm like, could she conceivably get back together with Barry? I didn't even think that was in the universe of possibility, but now she feels like she's just so alone. And they showed that here, right? When they shoot this scene, they shoot it entirely from sides of this door with the vertical glass window here. It's about a third of the door. And you see Sally kind of, they show her from the other side, just framed, almost like she's in like kind of a jail, but just looking in. And then you see kind of the other side of Natalie. She's doing the stupid hat thing and everyone's dying. And I just loved that shot. I thought that was just so cool. And then again, you start hearing that kind of the ears ringing, the dialogue starts dropping out and everything. That's the exact same thing that the show did back when Barry was kind of losing it. So nice job of bringing that around again and kind of showing the similarities a little bit between Sally and Barry. Maybe there was more of a reason they were attracted to each other than we thought.
Yeah, two things for me here before we move on. One, I believe I predicted Barry and Sally would get back together, so I'm pulling for you, Barry Bud. Make that happen for your boy Jamie G. I mean, I'm competitive, but who's keeping score here? Okay, Mills just got one. Jamie G's got to get one.
I mean,
right.
all right. So is there a couple named Bally or Sari?
Ooh, I think I like Bally a little more, but
well, makes you want to go to the gym, right?
Yeah, Sari sounds too much like Siri, and that's just a weird thing. But we'll think about it. Let us know, people. What should their ship name be? But the second thing, before it eludes me, is I just, another thing about the scene that was so cool is it was such a like massive difference and stark difference from Sally's room, where she's stuck as a writer on a show that replaced her show. It's horrendous. It's terrible. It's nowhere near as good as her show. And then you go to this other room and they're laughing, having fun. It's one big happy family, kumbaya. Looks like they're known as the party, team. Like, I mean, that's just opposite sides of the coin here, bro. I mean, it's one spectrum all the way to the radical next. It's the fucking North and South Pole is what I'm saying here.
Yeah, this is again her personal life and her professional life are both collapsing into each other. You get it, right? Like, she was always kind of a little bit hesitant. Like, she knew probably deep down she wasn't treating Natalie the greatest. And that feeling though, right? When you're kind of your underling kind of up jumps you there. And, and I'll say from the writer's standpoint, which show would you rather, which room would you rather be working in? I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. So that after working for the dude Mel, you would see why the other writers would think Natalie is a fucking party. It
sucks for her. Natalie basically stole her dream. I mean, you saw this coming a little bit. I know we'll get into it, but was this kind of how you saw it, or is this super shitty?
Oh, I don't think it's really shitty. It's not, she's not making Joplin 2.0 or whatever. We'll get to in maybe in a minute here about maybe the actual semantics of it all, but I don't think she in any way stole her show. Like, did she make a connection, probably a network, and met somebody who got her in the room to pitch? Sure, but that's how the game works, right? That's why you're someone's assistant. You're doing it to meet people and all that kind of thing. That's a lot of what that job is, to make contacts and stuff. So,
yep.
I think Sally sees it as a betrayal. You could make the argument, why didn't Natalie ask Sally to come work in her room or something like that? But on the other hand, maybe she didn't want to deal with that dynamic, because how would Sally have reacted even? probably not well, right? Even if Natalie was out of the goodness of her heart, be like, I think you're really talented. I want to have you on the staff. And Sally'd still look at it as a slap in the face, I think. So Natalie was in more or less a no-win position, I feel.
Speaking of Natalie, Natalie leaves the writer's room and heads to the elevator. And we see that she now has an assistant of her own, and she's a little shitty to her assistant. She's got her phone in her hand, and she's confronted by Sally in the elevator. Sally is furious, and she thinks that Natalie stole her show. She accuses Natalie of never having to work hard or struggle a day in her life. Sally backs Natalie into a corner, screaming in her face, and Natalie seems genuinely threatened and scared. She had a choice phrase, Sally did, that she used to shout at Natalie, didn't she?
You entitled cunt! You entitled fucking cunt! You entitled fucking cunt!
Before we get into the elevator, I just want to point out, this is definitely Natalie for the first time losing a bunch of points with me here. First, she's very specific with her assistant about having to make an appointment with the acupuncturist. And it's kind of funny, I guess, when you go to an acupuncturist, like the options are a tattoo guy or a fangs girl. So cool. But then if you're watching, Natalie's assistant is carrying things in both hands. And Natalie's waiting for the elevator, and she can't push the button herself. So she tells the assistant ding ding and makes the assistant try to like juggle all the shit to push the button. That's some cold shit right there. Like, you can't push the button, Natalie? Really? You can cube the carrots, but you can't push the button?
She's a little bit living high on the hog right now. I think she's a little too big for her britches, but I don't know, man. Success got to her head maybe a little bit, Mills. Good dialogue here between Natalie and Sally, though, initially. I mean, I thought this was really funny. Would you watch Just Desserts, right? I mean, Natalie's telling her.
What's it about? I play a single mom. I have a cupcake store with my daughter in Central Park.
What's it called?
Just Desserts.
Sally comes back with,
It's not a story. It's a fucking math equation.
is Sally right?
That is a direct reference here. So let's do the share thing. We're going to turn back some time here because Doc Brown's DeLorean's in the fucking garage right now out of fucking plutonium. And if we go back to episode 5 of this season, Crazy Time Shit Show, here's what the executive from Banshee says.
Oh, the algorithm takes word of mouth into account, but it considers other things too. For instance, if viewers see someone eating dessert within the first 2 minutes of the episode, they almost always finish the entire season.
Always.
Oh, and it's not just dessert. The same goes for Central Park, Kittens, Dev Patel.
And Hader actually mentioned this on a podcast appearance that during this, Natalie's taking notes. So what does her show have? It's a fucking Just Desserts coffee shop set in Central Park. What she did is she gamed the fucking algorithm. She took the premise of all the shit the algorithm liked and just made a show out of it. That's not stealing Joplin. Is that artistically rich? No. I mean, who knows? Maybe it could be a good show. Crazier shit has happened. But she didn't steal this show from Sally. She stole the show from the algorithm, if anybody.
The algorithm knows. I mean, she did come back with,
Fucking betray me!
Cubed your carrots for you.
hey, if I ever cube somebody's carrots, I will probably feel entitled to remind them in a moment of heat that I cubed your carrots for you. Like,
Yeah. Oh, and just the
buys you
part,
something.
in the part where Sally's doing a rant and she tells her like, it's my story, you don't even have a fucking daughter, and so Natalie's like, neither do you, Sally. Like, that's how far Sally is into her own shit. She can't separate Joplin and herself. And I think that's when she says that later on too. We'll get to that when she's like, my show is me. It's become all too personal for her, I think, and she just cannot separate anything. And I think, again, this is one of the things where she's probably projecting and she's basically yelling at herself here. So shout out fucking Sarah Goldberg, because yeah, this was just phenomenal. And again, Darcy Carden did a great job being scared. But if you notice, first we had the parallel to Barry's earlier thing with the ears ringing. Here you get her cornering Natalie and then punching the wall right next to her. Basically, this is literally exactly what Barry did to her.
To your point earlier, maybe they have more in common than what they know, or maybe she's just gone through that and now doing it to someone else in a fit of rage, all of which could lead a Barry and Sally reunion, which, I'm certainly rooting for, my friend.
Yeah, and one thing you notice right before we get out of here is that the show does a good job with this. Is you see Natalie the whole time she's starting to text when Sally comes in, and she kind of presses something and then puts the phone right here. So that all tracks. It's not like some secret. If you're watching and paying attention, you might have even picked up on that. The phone is pretty prominent throughout the whole shot, and I didn't pick it up the first time around. I was like, oh, do they get security camera footage or something? So we'll get into whether or not she maybe had an inkling if Sally was coming after her. But first, how have we come this far into an episode of Barry and not talked about NoHo Hank yet? So it's that time, and unfortunately, NoHo Hank did not take Mitch up on his offer because we see that he's traveled to Bolivia. He's trying to find Cristobal, and his method of finding Cristobal is like what you do in a video game when you just go around and start hitting the dialogue to people and asking where is X. So he's just going around wherever he is in Bolivia, randomly saying Cristobal Cifuentes just to people, hoping that somehow he gets something. And then one guy actually seemed to recognize, he's like, drugs? And NoHo Hank's like, yes, he deals drugs. And so the NoHo Hank just waits politely as the man assembles something, and that something turns out to be a blowgun, and the man shoots a dart into Hank's neck.
I love Hank here where he's like,
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought you were doing, but did not want to be rude. So,
dude, could you imagine going to a foreign country and literally having nowhere to I mean, no, Hank's got some balls, bro. Say what you want. This guy's courageous. I mean, that's like trying to find a needle in a haystack and you just go into a foreign country, just shouting out a name. You never know what type of trouble you're going to get in here. And yeah, I'm worried for my Hank, but this added some humor to a show that so far has been pretty dark, honestly.
And that's kind of NoHo Hank's role. And that's one thing I don't love here is he's been kind of shoehorned off into his own plot where he can't really interact with a lot of the other characters. He can definitely hold it on its own, but I think the more people he's interacting with, the funnier it is. And shout out Anthony Kerrigan, is the facial expressions he goes through here. Like you could do like a nice 4-panel meme of just all the different looks on his face, especially as the guy's assembling the thing. And the guy assembling the thing, this is funny, he's credited as Thick Neck, played by Mo Nudie. And this is actually his second appearance on Barry, according to IMDb. He actually appeared in the pilot as the same character. So I don't know, dude had a very impressive neck. If he's not going to play for the Eagles, maybe we can at least get him in the next episode here. And that Bolivian market, it just reminds me, there's an episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Byrne decides like, fuck it, I'm gonna sell the power plant, I'm gonna retire, and I'm just gonna smoke opium. And so they go to, I think it's Bangladesh or somewhere, and he just sends Smithers out. He's like, go buy opium. And then Smithers goes to a market just like this, and instead of walking around saying Cristobal, he's like, drugs.
First, I want to take a lot of opium.
Excuse me, do you know where I can buy some, drugs?
Drugs? Everything is drugs. Banana made of drugs. Monkey made of drugs. Look, all markets made of drugs.
I'd like to buy this.
Only American money. Our money is made of drugs.
Totally the vibe I got here.
Yeah, I thought old school just a little bit with you got a fucking dart in your neck, dude. Like that was just so funny. I mean,
that was a major dart from like 6 feet. That's not a syringe, man. That's more, I think, like a metallic pub dart, at least. From like, that range into your neck, that could, you don't need poison or something at that point. Like that alone,
could kill you.
That could do, if that hits your that could do some damage. Even if it doesn't hit your artery, it could hit your trach. There's just, he didn't need that blowgun for that distance. He probably could have just like flicked the little dart at him and would have been
just poked him with it, and you're fine. I mean, that blow dart to the neck. How you gotta love Hank's outfit though, real quick. I mean, he's got the, like, he doesn't stand out.
He was rocking the Dodgers hat last
right?
episode, so that's consistent.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not. I guess they could have put him in a sombrero or something crazy, but he's just looking like such a tourist here. Loved his outfit, but I thought it was funny and cute and all that at the same time. From there, we go back and we check out what's going on with Barry. And we see that Barry is still on the beach. He didn't make his way over to the group of people in the distance. Instead, he's sitting by himself, staring out at the ocean. We see a car drive up seemingly out of nowhere on the beach, and George Krempf gets out and walks up to Barry, and we see that Barry is actually sitting on the ground, popped up against a dumpster. The two men stare at each other as Barry continues to struggle to breathe. I mean, Lil Wheezy wouldn't even, he would be Big Wheezy here. I mean, he is wheezing hard, dude. I mean, this is, I mean, great job by Hader from an acting standpoint here.
Yeah, right. The writers room was probably like, good news, bad news, Bill. Good news is you get directional vocal cords, not a lot of dialogue this episode. Bad news, your lungs are going to hurt from having to wheeze for 12 hours. Yeah, he could definitely do a Buddy Holly cover or something like that. He's all the way there. Two main things here. I think the first one's a very nice point. The shot of the car pulling up on the beach. I know that's something they probably composited or whatever, but I thought it was very smooth. Looked really just a nice visual of this car just driving right along the beach. So that pretty clearly should tell you this is not something that's actually happening. The negative part is, how the fuck did George find Barry in a random alleyway somewhere near Sharon's house?
I'm not going to lie here, Mills. I was disappointed that this is what it ended up being. I wish it would have been something else. Like, it's just, last week I had to deal, last episode I had to deal with like Fuchs taking a, direct gunshot, point blank range to the heart and being fine and up and whatever within like a couple of hours, and also getting another beautiful young woman to love him. But that's besides the point. And here we are with this thing with Barry, where it's just like, really, that's it? Like, I don't know, man. I wanted something more, something, just more thought out to kind of have this be what it is. Not just, you realize Barry's just like up against a dumpster, kind of like hallucinating. Wasn't as happy with it at all. And then you add in the fact, like, was George following him? That's the only thing I could think of, is maybe George, was waiting outside the house or something and saw Barry kind of stumble out and followed him. I don't know, but they didn't show it. It was confusing. And for me, honestly, it was disappointing.
Because he didn't even go from his house, because the bikers were there last episode. So yeah, this isn't going to track. He found him because the plot needed him to find him. That's how it happened. It's just going to be one of those things. Again, I wish they had some cool way. And it like turns out this whole time that maybe, I got one. The Detonate website or app was hacked, and like hackers got the location data, and so it was available on like the dark web or something. So people bought it and they can track your phone if you have the Detonate app downloaded. Best I got.
And that's the best you're gonna get right here on the Barry podcast. Sorry, folks, we can't explain it.
Again, they've been pretty open that they had to do a bunch of reshoots and everything. And I would rather the episodes be as good as they've been and just have to overlook a couple of minor plot things like this, and have them maybe have to pad each episode out for an extra 6 minutes to make all this make just a touch more sense. I would prefer this. Usually I can make it up. I'm more concerned, like you said, with the people seemingly like Fuchs is totally fine now. Like, it's a little too much. The healing is worse than the people finding people, I would say. I can live with that a little bit. Everyone has kind of got mutant healing powers. That's the bridge that's a little bit too far, I'd say. So agree with you there. After that, we go back to Gene's class, and he's having his students embarrass themselves in an effort to make their performances feel more honest. After the scene is over, Gene asked Annie what she thought, and she said it was fine. When her script supervisor, Cheryl, asks Annie which take she should mark, Annie admits that she hasn't done this in 20 years, and she has no idea what she's doing, but she doesn't want Gene to know. She's having a full-on fucking panic attack. Cheryl tells her not to worry. Everything looks good, and she's doing great.
This was a smidge of a surprise for me, because honestly, throughout the thing, you didn't get much of it, but it looked like Annie, she looked like she was a boss in charge. She fucking dressed the part. She looked like she was ready to roll, knew what she was doing. So I thought this was kind of cool. She's nervously chewing gum at a heightened rate. She has no idea. This was just cute with her. And then at the end, she's kind of like, what was your name again? To the lady trying to calm her down, and like, Cheryl. That was a little bit of a funny part for me,
Cheryl,
too.
yeah. I enjoyed
it.
It all tracks again. Even if you did something forever, if you don't do something for 20 years, you're going to be rusty. And now with technology and things, I'm sure things are done entirely differently than they were back then. So it's easy to see that some of the other stuff, like you might just call things by different names, or they do it a different way now. So it's easy to see that. But it also makes a ton of sense that after she took this job and apparently all the money, she definitely doesn't want Gene to know. So that also tracks pretty well for me there.
And one thing too, I called this. This will be another one that your boy Jamie G is right on. How long before Gene wins over Annie and they start banging and they're a couple? I'm saying maybe 2 more episodes max. I'm taking the under on 2 probably if I got to. It's only a matter of time. We watched him earn the right through embarrassment and punishment to get with Janice. And it ended up being the love of her life. And I think he's going to do the same thing with Annie. And she's going to start to soften up, but beat the shit out of him verbally. It's going to be funny. It's going to be cute. And it's only a matter of time before Gene wins that thing over again. I think he's on his way there.
All right, save a little bit for predictions here. So save a little bit for predictions.
Predictions, we shall. Let's go check out, speaking of superhuman strength, let's go check out our guy Fuchs. We see Fuchs meets Jim Moss at his house, and Moss asks him if he feels like going for a drive. As they drive, Jim tells him about his military background, including being a fighter pilot who was shot down and captured during the Vietnam War. After being captured, while being tortured, he convinced his interrogator to commit suicide, which he did, allowing him and several other prisoners to escape. Whew. When we returned home, he found a job as an instructor at the military's SEER school, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. Distracted by the conversation, Fuchs doesn't pay attention to where they are going, and they pull up at the police station where officers are waiting for them. Two things. One, how did Fuchs make it this long? Because homie's just super dumb. Why would you get in the car with this dude and go for a ride? Just ridiculous. Two, Jim Moss is a bad dude, man. You don't want to cross Jim Moss. Don't cross the Moss.
I'm with you there, man. Shout out Robert Ray Wisdom, he's sometimes credited. Been in a ton of stuff. The Wire, Prison Break, Burn Notice, Ballers, Watchmen, The Alienist, lots of shit. Played a variety of roles, but he plays this role especially well. Just the quiet confidence, right? The very super confident guy. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's one step ahead of everybody. You know, we'll get to him in predictions because I think there's a couple of different ways they can go with his character. I thought this was great. And again, you calling it out for Fuchs. He actually, as they're pulling up to the police station when we see the cops, Fuchs is saying, I'm not a genius, but, and then you just see all the cops in the window right behind him waiting. Again, the editing and the direction here has been really, really strong this season. And especially in this episode, I love the composition of a lot of these shots. And Fuchs has had some great moments when they're doing these two sides in cars. He had the one with Nita's father last episode. He's had a few of these over the years with Barry too. So I don't know what it is. I think just Stephen Root's that good. When he's delivering some of this stuff, just the way, and you see it later in the interrogation scene, the way he kind of like, he hesitates and just the facial expressions, dude, it's just a phenomenal actor. Both guys in this scene doing just great fucking work. And the idea that Fuchs, we'll play, because obviously the clip of, the interrogator.
They make you talk?
I got my interrogator's head and he ended up committing suicide. And some of the other guys escaped.
You convinced your interrogator to kill himself?
Yeah.
And the guy killed himself? Was he depressed? Did you get any sense of his home life? I mean, he worked in a prison camp in the jungle during Vietnam. Seems like he might have been the ticking clock. I'm not saying, anything against you, man. It's just, it might be a right man, right day situation.
But then throughout the car ride, Fuchs can't get over. Like, he's trying to just rationalize. Well, maybe that guy was he's in the war, right? And he just can't, once he hears that Jim made his interrogator commit suicide, he can't get past it. Every thought he has from that point to they pull up at the police station is him in his brain just being like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What? Like, no, this can't be, because then I think he realizes that, oh shit, he realizes at that moment, like, oh, I majorly miscalculated. This is a justice dude, not a revenge panther. This is a justice panther.
I've made a huge mistake.
Good dialogue here, man. Enjoyed it. And you're right. I mean, Fuchs is such a good actor.
And after Fuchs and them pull up at the police station, they put him in an interrogation room. They try to figure out what to do next. Jim tells Albert what Fuchs said about Barry Berkman killing Janice, and Detective Mae Dunn tells Jim that Cousineau also said that Barry killed Janice. This seems to trigger something for Jim. Albert asks to interrogate Fuchs alone with the cameras turned off.
Look, we're getting consistency out of Albert. I still don't like his accent, but we're getting consistency out of him. The character's good. And, you gotta hand it to Big Cat here, though, man. I mean, Big Cat, he knows this is the Raven. And I just love his line where he's like,
gentlemen, respectfully, this is the Raven, and he's crafty like a fox. If he gets Jim here to kill Berkman and throw suspicion away from him, but we're not falling for that. No matter how many people tell us it was Berkman, we know It was this guy.
Big Cat's the man, dude.
Yeah, dude, Big Cat again. Like I want like a a Naked Gun police squad type spinoff here, please.
That would be great.
I feel a little bad for Mae Dunn because she does seem to at least be semi-competent.
Obviously, when Jim brings up, Barry Berkman, something snaps in Albert here. What did you think he was going to go in there and do when he asked for the lights off? Do you have a thought in mind with that? I mean,
basically, I think at that point he was going a little bit off the book, so to speak, and he was hoping that would maybe push Fuchs over the edge to tell him stuff, because at this point he seems to want to I'm sure the cop part of it, but he also wants to know, did Barry Berkman do this? And I think deep down he probably suspected it, but he didn't want to believe it was possible. Now getting outside confirmation from 2 different sources, and now he's got the dude in the room here. Yeah, I think it's, and again, I don't think he's really too concerned about Big Cat, but I don't think they should turn the cameras off. Big Cat just turned off the one TV monitor, so I think there's still a fair chance that got recorded. I don't know if it's a big deal, but after seeing the cell phone video be used in this episode, would it really shock you if somehow they recorded that and it becomes a plot point in the next episode? Especially because I'm not sure what they'll do with Fuchs from here, but we're not to the interrogation yet, so we won't quite jump there. Just all the Big Cat here.
Oh,
please. And thank you.
Dude, when he asked him if he wants to hit him with the sock,
he was serious. That was
you want a phone book to hit him with, a sock full of coins. That is so great, dude, because it doesn't. Well,
they're FBI, they're pros. That's what he assumes that's what they would do.
Hey, now this is the FBI, okay? They're pros. You want a phone book to hit him with? Sock full of coins?
Great, Big Cat, dude. He's every scene he crushes, no doubt about it.
And for the record, Jamie, what accent do you think Albert is doing?
I think it's a mass hole, like Boston-esque, Massachusetts, Maine-ish type, like Northern Mass type accent.
Ooh, he'd be mad at you. He's from Bensonhurst. It's a New York cat.
Just doesn't.
But my guess is that's his natural accent, and he's not doing. Point being, I don't think he's doing a thing. He's just got a bit of a New York accent.
From there, we've got to check out with Barry, and we've got to check on him. And Barry is in the backseat of George's car, still struggling to breathe. The car slows down as it approaches an emergency room, but speeds up again without stopping. George parks the car nearby and contemplates his next move. As with a shaky hand, he pulls out a handgun out of the dash. Not quite Ghostface shaky dog, but that hand was definitely shaking here.
Perfect job of the show here, doing the tell but don't say kind of deal. No dialogue here, but just the way they play it. You know everything you need to know. Barry is legitimately hurt and helpless. Dude's got him here. He wants to do the right thing, but he can't bring himself to do that. But he can't bring himself to kill him either. So he's going to have to sit there and deal with his inner conflict. It's about all there is to this scene, but I like they do it very elegantly. You get everything you need without having to do a monologue or something like that. So again, I think very good work here by the show. It's time to see Hank again. And Hank has also regained consciousness, and he's alone in a prison cell-like room, handcuffed to a radiator. He makes contact with Akmal and Yandar, who are confined in the room next to him. They don't know where they are, but they're working on an escape plan. Could you really talk through the walls like that? That looked like some serious shit.
It looked like cement, bro. I mean, that looked like solid cement walls. And Hank's kind of whispering, like
I'm just the one thing I'm wondering is this some kind of setup? You know what I mean? Are the guys have they already maybe been broken and now they're trying to sucker Hank into some kind of getaway thing where he'll lead them to something? Or I don't know. I don't know if I believe, again, the way the show, sure, maybe they're gonna really escape or whatever, but I'm not 100% sure that the guys are still on Hank's side here.
I mean, if Yandar's bleeding that bad, I mean, he's not showing any signs of pain. I mean, I don't know. Interesting. It didn't necessarily surprise me. I kind of, as soon as I heard it, I was like, here's where they're going with it. I'm curious where it goes. So, I mean, I'm not going to dock it too much, but like many things, the comedy elements, you kind of got to look the other way with some of the plotline stuff, which is cool.
One way or the other, right? You can't really blame Akmal and Yandar because if they've broken to torture, that's the one thing with torture, man. Everybody breaks, but if not, then all that team building that Hank was doing with the tours in the Buffalo Wild Wings worked. So if it worked, hey, shout out all the sauces at Buffalo Wild Wings.
All of the sauces. We're going to check back with Sally here, Mills, and we see Sally gets a phone call from Lindsay about a major problem. Natalie recorded Sally's outburst in the elevator and has released the footage, TMZ everywhere, up the ass. If somehow looks even worse from the video, I don't know how it's possible, but it like the angle makes it look even worse, more violent maybe. Lindsay tells her that Medusas have fired her. Sally wants to issue an apology, but Lindsay tells her not to and says she's coming over. Don't do a thing.
Yeah, because we know Sally she's just gonna sit there and idly wait. Yeah.
It did look worse though, didn't it, man? Like it looked super aggressive and scary seeing it from, not that it wasn't before, but seeing it from Natalie's angle, and you realize just how up in her face she is. And like, that is like pretty scary, man. Like nobody wants to be like, you know, have somebody in their grill like that in their personal space, like basically barricading them up against a wall, screaming at them and slamming the wall next to their head. I mean, that's abusive.
And this is a clip that, again, because they wrote it, it's perfect for it, but this would be, it's like built for social media, right? It's in close, it's intense, and it's got the perfect tagline entitled "Cunt" in over and over. It's just, in reality, this would be, if this happened to two, you know, even just one better known person like this or something, it would absolutely be everywhere. So
it would be the most popular 20-second video maybe ever.
Yeah, be trending that week at least pretty hard.
Yeah, till something else crazy happens.
Right, you're not going to be able to you know, to duck it at all, but you know, you might be able to ride it out depending on how, you know, wealthy you are or well connected. That's pretty much it there. It's just setting us up basically for the scene we're going to get when Lindsay comes over. But before then, we see that executive Bob Jacobson has arrived to check out Gene's show. He's having a conversation with Gene, Annie, and Tom, Gene's agent. He seems very happy with the show, and he compliments Gene profusely. Gene tries to defer credit to Annie. Bob loves the way that Annie shot Gene, and he tells Annie that he has some other projects that he'd like to talk to her about.
This is just,
I'm not even going to try the Tom dialogue, so just
no, but it's just it's so funny. Yeah, we'll roll the footage. Great dialogue. Again, an episode here that was probably one of the more darker episodes for me, which is crazy because no one even died. There's, you know, lots of episodes where people die, but it just had kind of this dark vibe to it throughout the whole kind of episode here. And I love the little bits of humor we got. We got a little bit with Hank. We're getting a lot of it here with Tom and Bob and Annie.
The way you photographed Gene, you made him so...
masculine?
No.
Virile?
No.
Rugged? Brawny? Gallant?
Nope.
Robust? Lantern-jawed? Un homme pour toute saison?
No. Tall.
Absolutely. He was like a real giant out there. He was very Adonis-like.
Yeah, you know, and you get Annie had the one good line about not having an agent since 1982, and you saw Tom trying to be like, "Hey, I could be your agent," and Bob's like, "Oh no, don't worry about that. You don't need no stinking agent. You don't need no stinking agent. Don't worry about that." Great.
Hold up, don't worry about an agent.
Yeah, just great interplay. You know, Bob is the type of character the show has been so good at creating. Someone who's just brand new, comes out of nowhere, but doesn't really require any introduction. Tom called him out before, I believe, when he woke Gene up in bed, like he's the guy who owns the streaming service or whatever. But that's all the introduction we have. We didn't even know whether or not he really liked Gene. Genuinely seems to like him here. Wouldn't surprise me to see him show up again. Also loved that everyone's just drinking around. It's this big party streaming service. Everyone's just drinking hooch out of red Solo cups. So must have been Jungle Juice Party.
Jungle Juice Party. It takes it right back to college drama class rap, right? That rap party was always fire, but it was always in red Solo cups.
That was moonshine, so yeah.
From there we go, you know, speaking of Gene, we're gonna check on him here, and Gene's good vibes disappear when at his party he suddenly sees Jim Moss. Gene's good vibes disappear when he sees Jim Moss standing in a doorway across the room. Jim tells Gene that Fuchs contacted him and he brought him today. Gene seems pretty nervous here that Fuchs might be talking to the police, and Jim Moss explains that Fuchs told him and the police that Barry murdered Janice. Jim asks Gene about Barry, and Gene lies, saying that Barry's a good kid. He wouldn't do such a thing. However, Jim can't help but notice the beads of sweat starting to build up on Gene's forehead. little bit of that Siri training coming out here, wasn't it?
Yeah,
For old Jimbo.
or just even being a good poker player. But the way it was shot, the slow zoom, and then the way Jim plays it cool, like he never, like a great poker player, never changes his face. And then at the end, when he changes his face, it's to a smile, and it's all puppies and sunshine, because that's what a real smart person does. He doesn't want to give Gene a clue that he knows, but he walked in. I'm pretty sure when he walked in, he was 98% sure. And so he didn't, the beads of sweat aren't obviously going to hold up in a court of law. I mean, maybe where you practice, but not in most places. And it gets him over that 2% hump. You know, I think that just the fact that Gene is lying, especially when he knew how dedicated Gene was previously to finding out who murdered Janice, you know, I think it's enough here. It makes sense, you know, and definitely adds to that kind of, you know, that aura that Jim has too. Like, this dude is going to be, you know, they're building him up to be someone that's going to be difficult for Barry to defeat somehow, especially considering Barry shouldn't be at 100% capacity. Although given the show's recent history, maybe Barry's going to come out of this with superpowers. I don't know.
Again, I love how they do these contrasts, man. It was happy, good vibes, feeling great. And then all of a sudden you just see this huge imposing figure in the doorway, and it's like he saw a ghost, bro, literally. So good work here by the Wink, Henry Winkler playing Gene Cousineau, and great job by the show, again doing those like drastic changes from in mood and vibe, and another good example of it here.
I think the one interesting thing here is, why does Gene lie? Jim's not really with the police. The police already have Fuchs. Is Barry even going to know if Jim tells him? I mean, for all Gene knows, Barry's not even around right now, right? I'm just kind of curious if he panicked or if he legitimately was covering for Barry now, because if he did, that kind of means that he forgives Barry on some level, right?
Yes. I think that he is genuinely scared of Jim. I think we don't know a lot about Jim, and you never know Gene's interactions with him, what Janice may have told him, what he's capable of. It's very possible that he thinks that if Jim finds out, and not only will he kill Barry, but Gene knew this entire time and didn't tell Jim, he could possibly kill Gene too. So I think maybe it's out of fear more than anything. I would love for him to have forgiven Barry just a little bit. I mean, I think Barry is a good dude at heart. He's just kind of messed up, man. I mean, I think that's the thing.
He has massive rage issues, I believe, is the NoHo Hank diagnosis. I guess that's the one thing that Gene isn't smart enough to realize, that if Jim brought Fuchs to the police, he's probably talked to the police. And since Gene told the police at one point that Barry did this, even though they didn't listen to him, he told them, it's on the record somewhere. You know, he just doesn't even think enough to put the things together that Jim might already know this. Again, you wouldn't really expect Gene Cousineau to be, you know, Gene Cousineau, private dick or whatever, but it's just, he picked the wrong time to back Barry, unfortunately, it feels like here. And that pretty much wraps that up. So after that, it's time for another big Sally scene, because Lindsay arrives at Sally's apartment, but she's too late. Sally has already released her apology video. They watch it together, and Lindsay tells her that it wasn't an apology video, it was damage control. Sally can't get past the idea that she is her show, and Natalie stole that show. Lindsay says that she should have just let her deal with this. Sally tells her to fuck off. Lindsay doesn't even care about her. Sally continues to rant, saying that she's speaking the truth, and if that makes her unhireable, so be it. Lindsay tells Sally that she's dropping her as a client and leaves, as Sally backs into the darkness.
Sally is definitely spiraling here, and you feel for her a little bit. But one thing I know from years of therapy is an apology is not a time to plead your case about why you may have done something. It is a time to genuinely apologize for something, not make a case as to why you did it, not talk about anything else. It's just literally an apology. So this was a bad move for her. Obviously, she made a rash decision. You know, she's not listening to her centers of influence that are supposed to keep her insulated from these things, like Lindsay, her agent. So this may be the lowest spot we've seen Sally this entire series, certainly this season.
It's kind of hard to picture how she goes lower, right? It's just, She has nothing. In theory, we don't know of her having any other friends. Like when she broke up with Barry, she went to stay at fucking Natalie's place. Like, is there any way she gets down enough that she goes crying to Natalie and like tries a real apology? I don't know if she has it in her.
I think she goes back to Barry. The only thing that, like, could she break bad a little bit with Barry and start, knowing who the real Barry is, and then all of a sudden she's going on jobs with him? I mean, that would be a crazy spin, but I think that's the only lower place maybe she could go. But it may make her happy in the end. I don't know, but tough times for Sally Reed right now, my dude.
And I don't want to undersell this scene by any way, shape, or form. It's just a fucking powerhouse performance and everything. This is just more one will show you more than you say it, because this is just, I mean, Sally literally at one point says she's fucking drowning here. And you really get that feeling that she is just completely manic, grasping at anything, and it's that sinking feeling that she knows like this is something she did something. There's something that she has to fix, but she can't or won't do it, and it's just breaking her, and she's just projecting her own shit onto everyone else, I feel.
It's now nighttime. Barry and George are still in the parked car. And George tells Barry that he still sees and hears Ryan. Sometimes he even talks to him. Full conversations. His wife thinks he's losing his mind and that the city turned Ryan into some sort of devil. He explains that he wants to hurt Barry and he could just leave him here to rot. But for some reason, he just can't seem to do it. He just wants to see his son again.
And one thing we did see when Fuchs was trying to recruit him, he is some sort of a doctor. So there is some sort of like Hippocratic oath thing here where, he is vowed to do no harm. So he does feel it makes sense that even on top of him obviously being a religious man in some way, shape, or form, that he also has the doctor thing going on. So they do a nice job here of showing why he could be genuinely conflicted about doing this to Barry. It makes it even more fucked up. I mean, maybe Barry being kind of a wounded animal saves him, right? Maybe if Barry was up on his feet and seemed happy or everything, he would have been more likely to do it. But seeing Barry all fucked up and on death's doorstep anyways, maybe it made it more difficult for him in a certain way.
I think so. And I think it gave him more time to think about it and be with his thoughts.
Well, seeing Barry suffering, right, that activated the doctor instinct a little bit, I think. Whereas if he seemed like he was having fun, he would think like, oh, that's like my son should have had.
Yep.
But seeing him suffering, it's more like what you'd see in a hospital or something. So I think that probably deep down triggered something. And I think the actor does great work here. And apparently at one point, this was a whole thing where there was a back and forth, like Barry had real dialogue with him, and it was more about his deep belief and stuff like that. And they basically kept cutting it down until Barry had no dialogue and just this kind of small bit here from George, and that's it. But I think it's very powerful, and I think it's better that way, especially if Barry really hadn't said much up to this point of the episode, and then all of a sudden he just, really having a full conversation. I think it would have been a bit jarring. So I like the way they did it. As Barry lies in the backseat of George's car, he hears the sound of ocean waves. Barry suddenly finds himself in the group that he saw on the beach earlier. Barry looks around and notices Chris. Upon further review, we see many familiar faces such as Goran and Fernando. Apparently, these are all of the people that Barry has killed. We hear a loud rumbling in the sky, followed by voices. We cut to Barry being wheeled into the emergency room. It turns out George did drive Barry to the hospital after all, but he shot himself in the head upon arrival. Man, way to go see your son again, I guess. That's what he said, right? He wanted to see his son more than anything else. So he kind of split the baby, more or less, so to speak.
Yeah.
The solution.
And this has been, as I've alluded to several times here throughout this podcast here on the Barry podcast, I think this may be the darkest episode the series has done. I mean, this is really dark shit. There's only maybe one or two kind of comedic parts here, and they're quick. They're needed for sure, but there's not a lot going on with that. I mean, maybe three, there's a handful, but it's not a lot. And man, this really pushes it to the point of like really dark shit. You feel for George here. And in the end, he couldn't hurt Barry, but he ended up hurting himself. That's how badly he missed his son. And so just a super subject that sucks. No parent ever wants to lose a child. And man, it got really dark here with the suicide. And Barry saw that, right? So, I mean, now Barry knows that he not only is he responsible for, Ryan's death, the son, but shit, dude, because of that, it's now bled over to the father, because of that. That's some heavy shit, whether or not it matters to Barry or not. Some heavy shit, dude.
And you kind of feel, have this been earlier in the season or a previous season of Barry, this would want to be a thing, right? Where then all of a sudden everything would get pinned on George and then Barry would just be scot-free again, kind of. And it feels like maybe it's not going to quite go that way this time. And we'll save where we go from here with Barry for predictions. I do just want to touch on that scene on the beach a little bit. I know there were more people in there. I definitely saw the dirt bike gang for the previous episode and the business guy who Barry shot in the head in the hotel from the flashback earlier in the year. I know there were more than that. Obviously, Goran, Fernando, probably a couple more of, we might have gotten a little bit of Las Aquilas.
Las Aquilas.
Maybe, because a couple of them didn't make it. I think a couple of them died in the bombing. So
yep,
that might have been our appearance of them in the episode. Cool thing, been done before, really. A lot of people talk about, movies and TV shows. It's been, when I only dream of all the people I've killed and that kind of deal. Hader talked about at one point they were going to do this thing where it was like there were clouds in the sky that kind of like looked like faces in the shape of clouds, and there was more dialogue and everything. And then they chose to basically make the scene about Chris. It's just that look that Barry has with Chris, and he's trying to wave or whatever. And at least Hader said the way he interpreted it was that Chris doesn't recognize it. Everyone else is kind of going to one place, and Barry is there witnessing it, but he's not, necessarily on the same track as them, so to speak.
Well, what's weird about that, and you're right, he didn't recognize him at all, and that was a weird wave by Barry too, by the way. But
again, it's one of those scenes that's supposed to be ambiguous. It's a lot like something. If you would have told me this was a scene from the 5th season of Sopranos where Tony Soprano is having a dream or an experience where he's standing in a field with a bunch of dudes he killed or something, I would have bought it. So it fits, I think, with the aesthetic of the episode. Cool stuff overall. Again, it been done. I like the way they did it. Pretty minimalistic as far as the dialogue and shit like that. A good atmosphere. And then again, the nice cut to get into it and back out of it again. And one last point before we move on, I'm not 100% sure, but is Barry wearing the same thing in this episode that he was wearing in the first episode of the season? That same gray shirt or whatever? Just occurred to me for a minute because it looks pretty damn similar. I couldn't tell for 100% certainty, but I think that would be maybe more interesting if it turns out all the promo materials were shots from the finale and not the premiere or something like that. Because and then the last little, it's not really even a spoiler, but the end, when if you sit through the credits, they do a little next thing on Barry, and all it is a shot of that scene that opened the season with that grave or whatever with There's No Forgiving Jeff. Like that was the only shot in the thing. I'm like, well, that's what made me think and look. And I'm like, oh shit, I think Barry's wearing the same thing in that episode that he's wearing here. So I don't know if there's any kind of tie into that. We'll save the rest of the speculation for predictions, which are going to happen soon enough.
In the final scene of the episode, Albert confronts Fuchs. Initially, Fuchs isn't being cooperative, so Albert changes tactics. He tells Fuchs that the cameras are off and explains how he got his scar. Fuchs puts 2 and 2 together here and realizes that he's Barry's Albert. Fuchs levels with Albert. He took that rage that Albert saw in Barry and harnessed it to make a lot of money. He explains just who Barry is and tells Albert that Barry also killed Chris. This seems to be the final straw for Albert. He storms out of the interrogation room, gets his gun, and heads off to the season finale.
You got to feel for Albert, though, right? Fuchs has to make a joke here about he got a scar from shaving. Albert's probably had to listen to a lot of bad jokes about his scar over the years, right?
I love how he just laughed. He's like, no, that's a bad joke. And then he tells him what it is. I was actually digging that with Albert here a little bit. I thought that was funny.
I would love to hear the top 5 jokes that Albert has ever heard about his scar and then his responses or something like that. That would be a good bit. I would enjoy that very much. I guess the interesting thing here is what's Fuchs's play? Like I read a little bit of interview with Stephen Root, and he kind of said that he interpreted the scene as he was trying to figure out how to get this dude to do what he wanted, basically. So more or less, I guess he was willing to sacrifice himself to go to jail just to sick Albert on Barry, which I guess tracks for the most part, right? Especially if you consider he in theory just had a near-death experience, but he's given up the love of these women and everything else in pursuit of this. So I guess is he willing to even take the risk that he is still on camera or whatever and say, fuck it. And just, he doesn't explicitly, he's close enough. I'm pretty sure in the court of law, they get him on what he says. He doesn't think he says 98% of it, but maybe there's just an eensy weensy little bit of doubt. But for the most part, I think Fuchs gives himself up here in the name of sicking Albert on Barry.
Yeah, I mean, you could say he's been blinded by the Vengeance Panthers. I mean, this guy really wants to get even with Barry here, and it's just
he's Panther struck. Is that what you're saying? He's Panther
I think he's Panther struck. That's pretty great. I mean, I guess for me too, it's like not only what's Fuchs' play is, but what's Albert going to do? I mean, is Albert going to go and try to bust him? Is Albert going to put a bullet in his head? Is Albert going to cover for him because he saved his life? That's the big question for me here is we see Albert as a straight, on the up and up, hard-nosed, no bullshit detective. But is he really? Does he, it's not necessarily a back the blue situation, but it's definitely a Semper Fi situation. And this is a dude who saved his life in Barry. Barry saved Albert's life. So, and then risked his career to try to get revenge for him. That's brotherhood, bro. So, it'll be interesting to see how Albert deals with this here. And if somehow, some way that shakes out to where no one ever knows what Fuchs said because Albert isn't around to tell it. And maybe, just maybe, Big Cat turned those cameras off. Maybe that's Fuchs. He gets out of there that way. That's
let's be honest. Big Cat, like they were going to have the footage on the hard drive somewhere, but he needed some new, now they got to bring the Raven squad back. So they needed some new logos. So all that video footage got overwritten with some new logo stuff.
Yeah. Big Cat prioritizes, bro.
Terabytes of logo opportunities. I mean, terabytes. This dude is not fucking around when it comes to logos. Stephen Root, I hope to God this is not for some reason the final time we ever see Fuchs. I don't think it will be. But the man just, you can shoot him in close and just the way he kind of like turns his mouth and crinkles his eyes, and it's just so good and so believable and amazing overall. I love this scene. And again, I think this pays off the way Albert's plotline is played out, because it really plays out like he was a guy, he's a very competent cop, and deep down, he was worried that this was Barry and Barry had something to do with it, but he didn't want to believe it because, like you said, that kind of brotherhood that they have, and this is what it took, but that's a bond. Like, and if you break that, so I think that was the thing with Chris, right? Because then Barry broke that bond in the worst possible way. And that's something that requires maybe justice that the law won't give. Depending on how you look at it, right? Like Barry still going to those support runs is either he's a nice guy or damn, he's a sick motherfucker. Or maybe it's both.
I think he loved Chris, man. He hated what happened to him. I mean, that's his way of kind of honoring him, I think. But
right. So it's definitely that, but it's also kind of cold that he can like compartmentalize the fact that that's happening because he killed him.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying, kind of like it's interesting that he is simultaneously both that good guy who has the good intentions, but also the kind of guy who is fucked up enough that he can compartmentalize the fact that he's going to a benefit that's taking place because he killed the person.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to live with, obviously, for normal people. Now it's time to highlight our favorite parts of this episode. Let's start by each choosing our favorite quote or dialogue exchange. I'm just going to let you run it because this was my favorite dialogue exchange of the entire episode, and that's Bob and Tom.
The way you photographed Gene, you made him so...
masculine?
No.
Virile?
No.
Rugged? Brawny? Gallant?
Nope.
Robust? Lantern-jawed? Un homme pour toutes saisons?
No. Tall.
Absolutely. He was like a real giant out there. He was very Adonis-like. Yeah.
I have to go with Bob and Tom, the entire fucking thing. It was way too good.
You don't have to sell me too hard in that. And this is more of an episode where the majority of the dialogue is pretty heavy in thematic and big. And I'm going to have to go that way, but I do have to give honorable mention to Big Cat's dialogue about the Raven and turning off the cameras, because we need that little bit of lightness here in the storm cloud that is this episode. But overall, I have to go with Sally when she goes off on Lindsay, telling her that she's fucking drowning.
This isn't an apology. This is damage control.
It's the fucking truth.
truth.
It has nothing to do with what happened with Natalie, and frankly, it cheapens what you set out to do with your show.
My show is me, Lindsay, and she stole my fucking show.
If you had just let me deal with this, instead, why did you have to say something?
Oh, fuck off! You don't care about me. You don't care about Joplin. You just care about your commission. Oh, it's so important to have a great relationship with Banshee. You want the relationship with Banshee, not me. You work for me, and I am fucking drowning. And instead of trying to help me, you're just trying to save yourself. This is honest, okay? This is the honest fucking truth. And if that makes me unhireable, then I am fucking unhireable, but at least I told the fucking truth.
This is a big performance, and again, I think one that was set up well throughout the season. So I'm going to have to go with that scene. That brings us to our favorite moment or scene of the episode of Candy Asses. It's my turn to go first. And because I already took the one scene with Sally, I'm going to go with the other one here and say the confrontation between Sally and Natalie in the elevator. Damn, and especially the way it mirrors Barry's kind of assault on Sally earlier in the season. It brought the Natalie thing back around full circle. Just phenomenal writing, phenomenally shot, phenomenally acted, all the good stuff. Jamie G, favorite moment or episode from Candy Asses?
And this is tough. There's so many good ones, and all of them were the acting was great. Some of the shots were fantastic. Again, the water coming up, on the road, the car on the beach, a bunch of different stuff that was done really cool. I'm actually going with that scene where we see Barry being, rolled into the hospital on the gurney, and he looks up and he sees that, George has just killed himself, and you kind of brings a lot of stuff in this episode together. To me, it was just one of the darker scenes of the I think probably the darkest scene of the darkest episode. And for me, man, it was pretty moving, and I'm going to give that my favorite. I liked how it all kind of came together without telling you. It showed you. In this episode, if it did one thing, it did a great job at doing that. That brings us to my favorite time of the episode, and that's where we each give our Greek Freak of Assassins. That's our MVP of this episode. It's my turn to go first again here. Dude, I gotta give it to Jim Moss, bro. I mean, Jim stepped in. He's an absolute, you don't mess with that guy, dude. He's all business. Don't cross the moss. He showed us his skill set. We learned a little bit about him. He took care of delivering Fuchs to the cops, and not only that, he's on the case of finding the truth. And when he does, what he does with it is going to be incredible. He's almost like that super big, scary villain that, like, how is Barry going to outsmart him, right? I mean, this is going to be interesting to see this whole thing shake out. And at the same time, you got this Albert coming at him full speed here. I like it. Going with Jim Moss.
That's a great call, because I would say if I was inclined to go with a character on Barry this week, Jim Moss would be the Greek Freak of Assassins, but I have to go a little bit differently here and go with Sarah Goldberg, the actress who plays Sally, because damn, this was just a fucking powerhouse of a performance of an episode. Incredibly intense. The places she's taken her character this season, in the way she plays it, especially that final red at Lindsay as she backs into the fucking darkness. It's just, you can't even do the, hello darkness, my old friend at the end. You can't even meme it because it's just so goddamn powerful. It really makes you both feel for her and be frustrated with her at the same time. Phenomenal performance. It's the thing I'll remember most from this episode. So even though she's an actress on the show, not a character, she's still my Greek Freak of Assassins of the week. That's what I'll remember from this episode. Is this was the Sally episode, more or less. And that's kind of crazy because the show's called Barry, and hey, look, we're no Roddy T's, but it has come to the time where we grade this episode,
because I'm the Fonz. Huh? Hey.
And in honor of Henry Winkler, Gene Cousineau himself, master of acting, we grade each episode of Barry on a scale of 1 to 10 Fonzies. Hey, I'm up first here. Been back and forth on this one. this does not fit the normal Barry template. I mean, again, this is an episode of the show where the titular character does not speak a complete sentence. There's a lot going on. It's not particularly humorous. I mean, the funny parts are very funny, but it's not really supposed to be funny. But I think it's shot incredibly. I do have some problems with a few of the plot mechanics or whatever. So probably just going to keep it at a 90, 9.0, 90%. Very solid episode of Barry. Loved a lot of what it did. Most of my problems with it here are just simply that if you think about some of it too much, it all falls apart. And I know that it was an episode that was supposed to be, a little bit more of a artistic type of episode. I get that they can take a couple leeways with plot and stuff. Still can't overlook it all. So I think 90 is fair. JBG, give me some A's.
Hey, man, gotta love the Fonz. I'm gonna be a little bit more not critical here. It just, all in all, man, it wasn't necessarily my favorite episode ever. It was super dark, and maybe it's because I'm on the tail end of dealing with Fuchs just miraculously recovering from a gunshot, point blank range to the heart. But it seemed like there were some parts here that were tough to kind of bring myself to accepting. Again, overall, love this show. Enjoyed the episode. I'm going down to 83 on this one. To me, it just wasn't as fun as, and it wasn't supposed to be probably, but I'm hoping it's a setup for a killer season finale, but I'm sticking at 83 Fonzies. Hey, I honestly can't believe that the finale's next week. I mean, that blows my mind. Feels like we just yesterday, we started, there was no forgiving Jeff, and this is it. Here we are, one episode left. Let's make some predictions and wildly speculate about the season finale starting right now.
I think the easiest thing here is let's just kind of maybe go through the main characters and plot lines here. Here's one we've already touched on. Gene and Annie. You've touched on it. You think they get together? Do you think it happens in the series finale, or is the thing that's carried over till next season?
I think that there's enough of them together this next episode in the season finale to know that it's happening, and we wait and to actually see the formalness of them, maybe waking up the morning, Jean's making their coffee or something. I think that comes the beginning of next season.
Okay, so you're saying Annie is going to basically be on the show next season, so they both live obviously till next year as well.
I think so.
Fair enough. I kind of like that idea. I kind of want to bring the algorithm back into this plot line somehow. Like either the algorithm loves it and it blows them up, or maybe Annie leaves to do something else and then the algorithm hates Gene's show and then he's asked out again and then she won't help him or something like that. I think because it is a streaming show, I think bringing the algorithm back around would be fun. Maybe I'm just partial to it, but I think especially because the way streaming is now, it's a really nice storyline for satire and whatnot. So I think that works. In the finale, do you think we get Gene or Annie or this plot line in general intersecting with any of the other plot lines at all? Or are they just kind of off on their own island?
No, I think it intersects somehow with, I don't know that's the last of Gene and Jim. I'm just not sure how they wrap this up. I mean, Sally's running out of people to go to. Could Gene
that was my thought. If it's anything, maybe Sally goes back to Mr. Cousineau crying and begging for a job or something.
Yep. I could see that. I think we see him, but I think it involves maybe one other plot line or subplot line somehow.
Oh, fuck it. I'll go out. Annie gets her own show, and then she gives Sally a job because she feels like Sally got blackballed like she did back in the day.
It comes full circle.
I like
wow.
That. That's what I'm going with. Anything else? Like you think we see Gene's son and grandson again? You think any like Tom go off to his own thing or something, or is that pretty much it for this plot line?
I think that's it. I don't see anything else happen. There's a lot of other things kind of at play here that I think are going to take most of the attention. And
right, this will be like the C plot of the finale or something. We're definitely going to see them, but it's not going to be involved in probably the big climax or what have you.
Yeah.
All right, let's
unfortunately,
move off to
be
kind
a big
of
climax.
Well, speaking about unfortunately not going to probably be in the big climax, or will they? And that's kind of NoHo Hank, Cristobal, Elena, the Bolivians, the Chechnins. How do we think this works? I guess first of all, are they still in Bolivia, you think? Like no one knows where they are. Is there any chance they knock NoHo Hank out and he's back in LA somehow? because I think that would work better, because then that increases the chances that plot line could cross over with maybe Barry's plot line or another plot line. Because if they're in Bolivia, they're kind of on their own, right?
They are. I think this doesn't get resolved. Something happens with it, but it doesn't get fully resolved until next season. I think that either they break away from Bolivia, or something happens, like Elena wants to sleep with Hank to get even with Cristobal. Like, I could see something strange happening here, but I don't know that this whole thing gets resolved by the end of the season finale. I think it bleeds over.
I mean, I guess, would you think they would do the kind of cliffhanger where you get to, it's like in the room, you have like Elena, Cristobal, and Hank, and Cristobal has a gun. He has to, like, in theory, choose to kill one of them. You think they would go for that kind of like way over the top cliffhanger?
Wouldn't surprise me with this show at all. Wouldn't surprise me.
And so what do you think that the status then of Hankoball is at the end of the season? Are they, I mean, again, I'm assuming we see Cristobal and Elena in the finale. You agree with that?
I think we do, but I don't think this gets resolved though. I think we'd end this storyline on a
So it's
cliffhanger.
possibility next year, maybe we open up and they're still in Bolivia for the first couple episodes or something like that.
A
becomes its
possibility,
own
or
subplot.
they're on the run back to LA, but Elena's chasing this storyline. I don't think gets resolved. You know, them being in Bolivia is only a piece of it. I'm talking about the overarching NoHo Hank, Cristobal, Elena, you know, Bolivian Chechkin thing. Like, I think this storyline is going to bleed over into next season. I don't think they can wrap it up this season.
Well,
and
look,
it's too good. There's really no reason to.
I mean, I would say that if the Chechen gang here was to form a Voltron, NoHo Hank would be Voltron's heart, but Voltron's head would be Batir. We didn't get to see him. He's the only one not here. It's kind of conspicuous. Do you think we get Batir, and or maybe you could see Michael Ironside again, or one of the Chechen elders? Any way they work into the finale here?
I'm gonna say yes, because I think somehow they escape, but it's not like they're free and clear. Like, they don't solve the problem. I'm gonna say yes, but I'm not. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Right. You know, my thought was like Akbar and Yandal there are fucking with NoHo Hank, and they're going to let him escape. He's going to think they're escaping, but really they're kind of double crossing him and trying to get Hank to lead him to something or tell him something. I don't know, maybe something like that. I don't really quite know where this is going to go. I will just say, like, yes, I want to see Batir again. Just not really a prediction. I just want to see Batir again, because Batir's just got that quiet, just great energy. Love Batir. And let's go down to, I have no idea where they're going to go with this one, and that's basically the Sally, Natalie, Banshee plot line. Do you think we really get any more of Natalie or Banshee as far, I mean, maybe we get mentions of them, but do you really think we're going to like be going back to the Banshee offices or really get much of Natalie in the finale?
There are a lot of chainsaws in the air. I don't know. I think we get something with Sally and Natalie, because there's got to be the fallout of Sally. Where else does she fit in here? I don't know that we go a season finale without seeing her. She's either going and starting a new storyline with aligning with Barry and or Jean, or they have to do it with Natalie and Banshee. Man, I'm gonna say we don't.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're probably right. This already figures to be a bit of an overstuffed finale. I don't know that we need any more resolution on that plot line. We might get maybe a little clip of Natalie on social media responding to Sally's apology or something like that, but I don't think we're going to have a major scene with, you know, of them independently or with, like, I don't think Sally's not going to like storm the Banshee office and do something fucking stupid, is she? I'm just trying to think again, how much lower could you go? And I guess, imagine ending the season and you're in jail and you see Fuchs, and then you pan over and the cell next to him is fucking Sally. Like, and then you somehow pair Fuchs and Sally up for next season. I'm trying here.
That would be
I would be interested in it. Both actors are great.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where they go from, because you have to figure, right, how much lower, like on a scale of 100 to 0, how close to 0 is Sally right now?
I mean, she's
like a
she's
6?
single digits. She's single
like
digits.
A 6.
Yeah,
she's not quite a 0, but she's
close. She's on her way.
She might just be going to get that shopping cart full of vodka and saying fuck it at this point. I mean, I'm worried for Sally, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I would like to know eventually if Natalie's show is a hit, but I don't think we'll find that out in the finale. I'm guessing it's a hit because the algorithm is going to love it, but If we had to
That's
see
Central
Banshee,
Park.
that's what I would want. Is just the executives reacting to how much the algorithm loves this show, and then maybe it crosses over with Pam or something. Who knows? And let's go, I guess, to this. This is the main plot line here, right? You got Barry, Albert, Jim Moss. They seem to be the three-on collision, and then you kind of have Fuchs, who is tangentially involved. Let's start with him. How much Fuchs do we get in the finale, if any?
Very limited, maybe one scene.
Like one scene of him in jail talking to somebody, and you definitely think Fuchs survives the season and he's on the show next year.
I do. He's too important to the show. There's really no reason to kind of kill him off. Even if he somehow is in jail, he's on the scene. He's on the show next year. I think whatever happens with Fuchs depends on what happens with Albert and Barry. You know, that if Albert somehow goes away, Fuchs becomes free. But even then, though, Big Cat thinks he's the Raven, so he's still got to deal with that. So I mean, I don't know. This is true. I just realized that, like, if Albert's gone, Big Cat still thinks it's Fuchs unless Jim Moss gets involved and does something. I don't know how Fuchs is free here, honestly,
but in theory, what do they have Fuchs on? Say that Albert really didn't record that and he just whatever. He let Fuchs do it off the record, so to speak, because he just wanted that information personally. What do they actually have Fuchs on?
Nothing.
So so in theory, it wouldn't be, because I think, I'm all for that. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think it's like right on your wedding day that Alanis Morissette? But I wouldn't like the idea of Fuchs surviving that gunshot only to randomly die in the finale or be written off the show. If you're going to make him survive there, I'm going to be disappointed if he doesn't make it, especially because it seems, that's what Albert wanted, was stuff on Barry. And technically, I guess, yeah, sure, he was a manager for a hitman, but given the Los Angeles Police Department, unless Albert's pushing for it, I don't know that they're going to really, again, because the Big Cat will be trying to indict him for the Kennedy assassination or something.
I mean, Big Cat is on the case. I guess, what do you think's happening with Albert here? I mean, is he possibly, this is kind of like a kill, marry, fuck scenario,
let's
right?
do it
what's
this
he
way.
doing?
Let's do it this way. Who gets to Barry first, Albert or Jim Moss? Or do they get there simultaneously?
Well, he's in the hospital. So
all right, so let's do that first then. When we open the finale, is Barry still in the hospital?
I think he is. I think
I just think the show has been very bad with the timeline this season. If you think about stuff for any kind of minute, the timelines just don't really line up here unless they're going kind of memento on us and just showing shit out of order without really making it obvious at points. Even if he wants to get out, that's one of those deals where they're going to hold him for like 24 hours for observation or something, right? I guess it's magically like to pump his stomach and he just does the thing where you pull your IVs out and just walk out of the hospital somehow, maybe as they arrive. I'm just curious because say Jim and Albert meet each other up like on their way to Barry. How does that work? Because I'm not sure what either of them want. Because Jim seems like the justice guy, right? But this is his daughter. Would he make an exception? What would be interesting is if Jim sticks around to season 4 and instead of trying to kill Barry, he does some psyop shit on him and just tortures Barry throughout the whole season, like sadistically from a distance, like all the stuff that Barry talked about doing, like he does to Barry and just doesn't relent the whole season and Barry doesn't even realize it's happening. I think that would be fucking cool. But I feel like Albert and Barry is kind of a one or the other, right?
Yeah, and I think it's Barry's going to be the one Barry's going to be the one to live, and Albert's the one to go here. But how is the most intriguing thing?
That's why I'm trying to figure out a way where somebody who's not Barry takes out Albert somehow.
Unless Albert is going to be pro Barry and like defend him and cover him up and like help him, but I that doesn't track at all with anything we've seen.
No, the way he was shaking when he left and the way he pulled that gun out. Again, Chris, like you talked about the Semper Fi, they were brothers. And the idea that he would kill Chris just because Chris saw some shit that he shouldn't. Not because Chris killed somebody and Barry did it for revenge or something. Barry did it just to cover his own ass.
I love how everyone just believes Fuchs. Like he just shows up as Kenneth Goulet. Like Albert's not asking him about, who's Kenneth Goulet? Why are you, he just believes anything he says. I mean, it's like, it's true, but Albert
I
doesn't
mean,
know that.
maybe not quite the whole Barry was a hitman thing, but I think when, again, like a good interrogator would, when you walk into the room, you already know the answers to most of the questions. What you're going for is the reaction, the way they're told to you. What other information can you glean? Make them repeat their statements over and over, look for inconsistencies. And I think that was the idea between turning the cameras off. Like I said, give Fuchs away. I don't think either of them knew the important personal connections. Fuchs never even admits that he was like a family friend of Barry's. You know, there was no reason Albert thought walking in that Fuchs had a close personal connection to Barry. And there's no way that Fuchs knew that this was the Albert from the army.
Yeah.
So that was a nice way of doing it. And I think, you know, Fuchs kind of gets there maybe a half second before, and that's why he sets Albert up. So he's like, all right, I see how I can, by turning him against, that's why he emphasizes the Chris thing. So he can turn him against this fellow, you know, show what he did against this fellow Marine. And so obviously we think Barry survives, right? So we're saying probably Barry survives, Albert does not. Is that where we're landing? And
That's where I'm
Jim
at.
Moss probably also survives.
I think Jim Moss survives. He's too good of a super bad to heading into season 4. It's kind of the villain character for Barry. He just works too well. It's the main nemesis.
So I'm going to go with, because we don't know who else is going to take Albert out. I'm going to go with, because I was actually looking for the boy Kyle on the beach and I didn't see him. So maybe he lived, but I'm saying his mom, because she's played by Annabeth Gish. And I mean, sometimes the show does get pretty, you know, actors to play smaller roles than you think. But imagine if she comes back around looking for revenge and she shoots a Barry and accidentally clips Albert. I mean, that feels like it would be about par for the show, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a bad way, just in a, you know, again, the Alanis Morissette kind of way.
Oh, I really do think.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm excited about this storyline, dude. I mean, there's 2 or 3 things going on, a bunch of different ways it can go. I think we agree on where it's going to go, but the how here is what's intriguing. I mean, Barry's in a bad way. Fuchs is in a bad way. Albert seems hell-bent on you know, evening the score. Jim Moss is on the case. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on here.
Let's have a touch of fun for a second and just try to imagine, like, this show, it feels like there's going to be some sort of like physical in-person confrontation, right? Where do you think it is? Because the show usually reuses sets and scenes that we've already seen. Like we had the big shootout in the monastery. We had the classroom involved in the season 1 kind of finale. Knowing the locations that we have, where do you think this big confrontation could take place?
My guess is it's going to be somewhere totally random, outside, parking lot, you know, behind the hospital. I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one, Mills. You got anything on that?
The former site of Plants.
Yeah,
It's a
parking lot.
place
Yeah.
that might be you know, available to them, because I'm also thinking practically the show would want to reuse locations. Doing it, I don't think they'll do a big like Matrix scene, like they would never go to the Banshee offices or something like that. Be kind of fucked up if they went back to that car dealership. That would be cool, but I don't think they will. What if Barry uses like NoHo Hanks like the love nest because he knows they're not around or something like that? Maybe that'd be an interesting place for Barry to go to hide or something. I'm just trying to, he goes there looking for NoHo Hank, not realizing that they're gone or something like that. I don't know. We already talked pretty much about the remaining Vengeance Panthers. Do you think we ever get to find out what logo Big Cat picked?
Sadly, I'm going to say no, but I could think up a way where they could make that into reality, but sadly, I'm going to say no.
Dude, the opening shot of season 4 is you kind of just see this fuzzy and then you zoom out, you see the Raven logo, and then you zoom out and it's on the white uniform that the fucking Big Cat's wearing at the police station. And that's how you open season 4. Totally could have the logo. Finally, most importantly, in the finale, will we get another callback or experience with the Detonate app or Mitch?
As much as this pains me, Mills, I'm going to have to say no. I wish we did.
There's a part of me that wants the final fucking showdown to go down in Mitch's. That was really what I was thinking before. I don't know how you would do it, but I just imagine like kind of all this chaos going on and Mitch just standing there like, yo, guys, you shouldn't be doing this, man. You should totally sit down and have some beignets and talk this out.
This is wrong on many levels.
So I would love to see Mitch just standing there doing his Mitch beignet thing. It's just there's a firefight going on in the background or something.
I'm there for it, dude. That would be, I mean, I like it better than Plants. Don't get me wrong. A battle at Plants would be awesome, but you know,
well, that was me thinking from a
showdown
practical
with Mitch would
location
be even better.
standpoint. It's a nice parking lot. Doesn't cost a lot. They can block it off easily. There's cover from all the shit that'll still be there that you can hide behind. I don't know. It makes somewhat sense from a practical standpoint.
I think that wraps up Candy Asses. And here's what's coming next on the Barry Podcast.
We've come this far, so I guess next week we're going to be covering episode 8 of season 3, the season finale titled Starting Now, which is directed by Bill Hader and written by Bill Hader and Alec Berg, show co-creators, show co-runners. The Barry Podcast episode covering the finale will drop on Wednesday, June 15th.
Thank you so much for checking out the Barry Podcast presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. We hope that you enjoyed listening to and or watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. It's very easy, helps us out a lot. Mills, please tell the people how much you appreciate them and where they can find all of our content.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for checking out the Barry Podcast. If you're not already subscribed, please do so on your favorite podcast app at the Barry Podcast. Same thing on social media at Barry Podcast. And you can send your feedback to barrypodcast@gmail.com. We're from the Joe Blow Football Show, who you can find at joeblowfootballshow.com and on social media at Joe Blow Show. We are currently covering the 6th and final season of Better Call Saul on Saul Over Soon. Find us on your favorite podcast app at Saul Over Soon. Same thing on social media. We just are wrapping up our coverage of Ozark from Netflix. We are the Ozark Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And you can find us on social media at Ozark Podcast. We can never stop covering It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We are the Night Pod Cometh. Find us by searching for Night Pod Cometh on your favorite podcast app and on social media at Night Pod Cometh. Just a bit ago, we wrapped up our 6th season coverage of Peaky Blinders, just about to drop on Netflix. So if you're about to pick back up with Tommy Shelby and the boys, you can find us by searching for PBP, Peaky Blinders, on your favorite podcast app, and find us on social media at Peaky Podcast. I'm Magnum Mills. He's Jamie G. We really hope that you enjoyed this, but if not, there's no need to worry. I'm pretty sure that people can change.
And always remember to turn off Wi-Fi before you press the detonate button.
And make sure you only get your beignets and advice from Mitch, and only Mitch.
We'll see you next time on the Barry Podcast.
This has been the Barry Podcast, presented by the Joe Blow Football Show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with Barry, HBO, Alec Berg Inc., Han Arpley, or Warner Brothers Television. The views here are those of the hosts only, and they do not reflect those of any other person, organization, or entity. Thanks again for tuning in, and we're looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.